Want to know the secret weapon that can transform your intonation on the double bass? Well, stay tuned. Hey friends, Jason Heath here from Double Bass HQ. Today we're diving into one of the most powerful tools that most bassists probably aren't using quite enough, and that is a drone. This technique has been a game changer for my students and me, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to use it to level up your intonation. I discovered practicing with drones way back freshman year at Northwestern University. My teacher, Michael Hovnanian from the Chicago Symphony, told me I had to go out and pick up two things: a metronome, which I already had, and a drone. And I was curious what that was and what it was for. It was a box that you could pick a pitch and have it play. And we've come a long way since then. If you have a phone, anything you are watching this video on, you can also get a drone on, I am sure. But I used to have this clunky little plastic thing that I carry around with me at all times, but boy, did it put a magnifying glass on my pitch. So why should you care about practicing with a drone? Well, think about it this way. Drones are to pitch what metronomes are to rhythm. And when I ask people on audition committees what makes people not advance, it's not all the fancy stuff, folks. It's rhythm and pitch. Now, practicing with a drone is great for any musician, but I think it's especially helpful for us bassists. Intonation can be such a big struggle for us. Our sounding pitch is so low. It takes so much strength to bring the strings to the fingerboard, and we can play so few notes into position. So that means a lot of destabilizing moves like shifting and string crossings. So when to use drones? You can use a drone at any point, but it works best when the music's not modulating a whole lot. So scales and arpeggios are a great example. Or I like to use it when I'm practicing solo Bach, and I prefer putting the drone on the fifth. And let me give you an example. We'll use my favorite drone app, Tonal Energy. This is like the Swiss Army knife for music apps, super duper useful. And let's start with the G major scale, but I'm going to drone on G. So that works pretty well, but you do notice that tuning the F sharp to the G is a little bit of a challenge. So instead of droning on G, what if I drone on D? We don't have those half-step clashes, and I just find the fifth in general quite useful, and that's my default. Now you can drone with tonal energy. It's cool, you can drone with more than one pitch, so I can actually turn G and D on. And I can do different octaves, so I'll do this G, I'll jump up for this D. This video is brought to you by Upton Bass, and Gary Upton did an interview recently with Blake Hinson of the New York Philharmonic, very cool, and then a little bit later put out a follow-up video where he's digging a little bit deeper into the concept of honing your bass, optimizing your bass for maximum playability. It is a very interesting concept, and it's something that I haven't heard explained as eloquently as Gary did in this video and in that video with Blake. So check it out. It's linked up in the description below, and thank you, Upton, for sponsoring this video. That drone really narrowed the window of acceptability for pitch for me, and even though you think you're playing in tune, when you have something objective and stable like a drone, it's just amazing how your standards will go up. You could even add in the third if you want. And with this app, you can go just intonation versus equal tempered intonation. I have gone through phases in my life where I practice with the drone a lot and then maybe not so much. These days I do it probably about 25% of my practice session, and there are many different ways to practice with the drone. My default is to put it on the fifth just because there aren't any half-step clashes in a scale. I try to do it while I'm practicing scales. I also, especially if I'm practicing something like solo Bach, I'll put it maybe on the root in that case,
or the fifth, and I will on occasion practice with more than one note on a drone, and my app of choice, Tonal Energy, is great for that. You can set it and have the root in the fifth or the root in the third and the fifth, or just intonation. And I did a great deep dive video on intonation with this wonderful author and violist named Molly Sharp. I will link up to that, but that is a really fascinating explanation and very clear explanation of intonation, and practicing with the drone, I just find it super duper helpful.
So much fun, but really just the fifth is more than enough. And another reason why I like Tonal Energy for practicing with drones is that it gets loud. That saw wave I like particularly because I can use it even if I'm doing a bass quartet or something like that. It's loud enough for us to hear it, but there are more pleasant sounds if you like the organ or some of the other sounds in there. It's really a lot of fun to practice with. When I'm practicing with drones, I do what I call the fermata technique, which is to basically eliminate any concept of the actual rhythm of a passage and to just put a fermata on every note and not leave it until I'm really happy with that note. And I'll play a little bit of the Bottazzini Concerto, the first movement, as an example. So that is an E minor, so we'll put a drone on B. All sorts of octaves are interesting. I'm just going to pick this one, and so we'll start here. So if I'm a little flat, really obvious. Same thing going sharp. There's that half-step clash. And droning on different pitches, it almost kind of changes the perspective of the piece. So I'm a big fan of doing that same intro to Bottazzini and now droning on the root. You could do the same thing on the third, so we'll go G. And then when I turn off the drone and just practice the passage, I feel like I've gotten my bass and my pitch certainly into focus.
And I actually find practicing with the drone more helpful than just having the tuner on and telling me if I'm flat or sharp. I also find that useful, and I will practice using both modalities, but I really want to train my ear to hear that pitch and to lock on quickly. And so practicing, rather than just using my eyes, actually really using my ears. But hey, you can do both, and I recommend doing both, but if I had to pick just one, I would practice with a drone over just watching the tuner needle.
You can absolutely put the drone on and practice in time too. That can be quite helpful. Maybe start slow. So let's take that Bottazzini example again. We'll put the drone on the fifth. I'll put the metronome on this time. I would generally not do that until I'd gone through and used the fermata technique. And the wonderful Brendan Fitzgerald from the St. Louis Symphony, I did an extended interview with him on practice techniques, which I will link up to. He told me that he basically always has a drone and a metronome going at all times. I usually flip between the two, but it can be very helpful. And once you get into practicing with the drone, you're not going to want to quit. I am amazed at how kind of dull my ears can get if I don't use a drone. And so daily practice with one, I find it super useful. And your experience, depending on what octave you choose, will differ. And frankly, depending on what timbre you choose. My teacher, Michael Hovnanian, when he first got me into drones, he told me to make my bass sound like the drone pitch. So in other words, play a little bit brighter. And that means generally getting closer to the bridge. And I've done a whole video about why we all probably should consider playing a little bit closer to the bridge, at least from time to time. You can check that out in the description below. Before we wrap up, let me share some common mistakes that I see students making when they're practicing with drones. Number one, not listening actively enough. You have to really focus on the relationship between the sound of your bass and the sound of that drone. Number two is moving on too quickly. Take your time with each note. Remember that fermata technique. And number three is only practicing easy passages. I mean, I love drones over scales, but don't forget to practice harder stuff with drones as well, because one of the things that can so quickly go out the window when you're focusing on string crossings and rhythms is your pitch. If we're not playing in tune, what are we doing here? And there you have it. Those are my top tips for practicing with a drone. It's a simple but quite effective technique. Again, tonal energy, it costs a few bucks, and there are free drones out there, absolutely. And you can go old school and buy an external droning device. I'm sure those are still out there. If you found this helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that like button, and check out the other practice tip videos I've got linked up in the description and in the cards. If you have any questions or your own advice for practicing with a drone, please leave them in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.
I love taking these afternoon walks with William the dog and getting some fresh air and clearing my head. And because I'm a big bass nerd, inevitably the topic of bass pops into my mind. So I try to make sure that I have my camera or cameras here and I can capture those thoughts.